All right, I mentioned yesterday the system of equations and how this is something important from algebra that's going to show up on the PSAT and the SAT. So we definitely want to make sure that we remember how to solve a system of equations. It's also going to be a big part of what we're doing today when we are finding quadratic equations by hand. So you used graphing, substitution, elimination last year. And then the answer to a system of equations is a coordinate point. Okay, there's one real solution. You may have also done examples where there's no solution or infinitely many, but all we're going to focus on today are equations, systems of equations that do have a solution, and there'll be one real solution. So real, not imaginary. So we're going to review first. A system of equations, that just means you have more than one equation, okay? So it's sometimes there's two, later we're going to deal with three. And if we want to solve a system, the goal is isolating the variable. And today we're going to focus on elimination to isolate that variable. So if we are going to eliminate, what we want to happen is we want those coefficients to be opposites. Right? So opposites would be like if you had positive 10, what would the opposite be? Negative 10. Okay? If you had negative 5, the opposite would be positive 5. Okay? So that's the main goal, is you want to get opposite coefficients for one of the variables. So if it's positive, you want the negative, or vice versa. Okay? So we have to get the opposite coefficients. And make sure you guys are writing down what I'm writing down. I'll give you very specific instructions today. And then we're gonna do an example together. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a system of equations, and we're gonna talk about what we want to get, what our goal is. Okay. Jason, any more time writing this part down? Okay, so for example, if we have 2x minus 4y equals 5, and 14x minus 5y equals 2. I'm going to talk about our possibilities there. Okay, so what we have is we have two choices. When we're doing elimination, we get to decide, do we want to eliminate the x terms or the y terms? Okay, so the two choices, okay, you want to either get opposite x terms or opposite y terms. Okay, so you get opposite x terms or opposite y terms. So let's talk about how we would get those, okay, and what they are. So let's look at the x's. Okay, we can manipulate the equations to get opposites. So we have 2 and 14. Can you guys think of a number that we could make both of them so that they're opposites? Yeah. Okay, so you could multiply the top by, and yep, you can multiply the top by, and we would do -7 because we want it to be -14. But yeah, that's awesome. So how can we manipulate? Like Dane said, we're going to multiply, right? That's what we're going to end up doing, is we're going to end up multiplying. Okay, and the goal of multiplying is to get what's called the LCM. You guys remember what that stands for? What's the LCM? Yeah, the least common multiple. Okay, so choice 1 would be getting negative 14x and 14x. And then, like Dane said, we're going to multiply the first equation by negative 7. That's what we would do. We are actually going to do it with our examples, but we're just talking about the y's right now. Not the variable y, but why we're doing it. Okay, and then in terms of the y variable, I have negative 4 and I have negative 5. What's the least common multiple of 4 and 5? 20. Okay, so if it's 20, then I could get 20y on the top and negative 20y on the bottom. Right? Then I'd have opposites. Technically, if you wanted to do the negative 20 on the top, you could. And the positive 20 on the bottom, that's fine. Okay, so what would I multiply by negative 4 to get to 20? Yep, so you could multiply the first equation by negative 5. Okay, and then to get negative 20, I'd have to multiply this equation too. What would I multiply this by? I'd just multiply by 4. So multiply the second equation by 4. So again, you have two choices. You can solve the equation, the system of equations doing either one, but between choice 1 and 2, what's probably going to be a little bit less work? Choice 1, because you only have to multiply one of the equations. Okay, so that's the decision that we're going to make as we go through A, B, and C. Okay, and the first one we are going to do that together. So don't worry if you forgot from Algebra 1. We're going to go over that. Okay. All right. So let's start with Part A. We have 8x plus 14y equals 4 and negative 6x minus 7y equals negative 10. So the first thing that you're going to think about is, all right, do I want to eliminate the x's or y's? And guess what? Doesn't matter. You can choose. It's just sometimes there's a shorter way. So let's take a minute to look at these two. Do you guys have any feelings on which one you want to eliminate? Yeah, I think the y's would be a little bit quicker. Okay. Now, in addition to like doing the process for A, because we're doing that together, I'm going to write out the steps for you so you can go back and you can see exactly what we did. So the first thing that we're doing is we're choosing which variable to eliminate. And we are going to multiply to get opposite coefficients. Right? And remember, coefficients is just a fancy way of saying those numbers in front. Okay, so I have 14y, negative 7y. If this is 14y, 14 and 7, what's the least common multiple? 14. Okay, so if I want these to cancel out, I'm going to have to multiply the bottom by 2. When you multiply the bottom by 2, make sure you do that on both sides. And you are using the distributive property. And then I just use my arrow because I'm going to keep them stacked up. Okay, so 2 times negative 6x is negative 12x. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14y equals negative 20. And then I don't have to do anything to the top, so that's just going to stay the same. I'm just going to move it over so that when I do my next step, everything is lined up really nicely. You guys remember what the next step is from Algebra 1? What you do with the equations once you get the opposites? Yeah, you do what? Oh, I thought I heard a whisper in the wind. What do you do to the two equations now? Now that you have opposites? You're going to add them together. Okay, so we're going to add the equations. So that's step 2, add the equations. Okay, so what's 8 plus negative 12? Negative 4x. And then if you did your elimination right, 14 and negative 14, those should cancel out. So you won't have any more y's. And then 4 minus 20 is negative 16. And then you're just left with a one-step algebra equation. Okay, and then this is what we're doing in step 3. We're solving for the isolated variable. And you chose what variable you were isolating. Yeah. So now we know what x is. Once we know what x is, how are we going to find y? Yeah, we're just going to plug it in. Where are we going to plug it in? Yeah, we're just going to plug it into one of our original equations. So we're going to substitute the value into the OG equation. You can decide which one. And that's going to help us find the other variable. Okay, so substitute the value into an OG equation to find the other variable. You can decide which equation you want to plug it into, but if I'm looking at the two choices for A, what do you guys think? Should we do the first equation or the second one? Yeah, I like the first one because there's a lot less negatives in there. So I feel like that would probably be the best one. So if I have 8x plus 14y equals 4, all I have to do is substitute in the 4. Okay, so then I have 32 plus 14y equals 4. Subtract 32 from both sides. 14y will equal negative 28. And then what did you guys get for y? Negative 2. Great. Okay, the last step when you're solving equations, the solution is a coordinate point. It's always going to go in alphabetical order. So for this one, it's xy. For the next one, it'll be mn. And then the last one is ab. Okay, so your final answer for this would be 4, negative 2. Okay, do you guys remember doing some of that in Algebra 1? I know it's been a while. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and do part B. I want you to start that. So do the first couple steps. Put that into that one. So remember, the first thing you're deciding is, do you want to eliminate the m's or the n's? what's your guys, what's your initial thought? Do you guys want to, are you trying to get rid of the N's, or are you trying to get rid of the M's first? Okay, yeah. That's kind of what I think. Again, it really doesn't matter. But when you've decided that you're going to eliminate those, what you have to do is figure out what to multiply by to make those opposite, because they're not opposite right now, right? So the LCM, what's the least common multiple between 2 and 7? 14. So one has to be 14, the other one has to be negative 14. Okay, so can you guys do the multiplication and write your new equations after that multiplying? And if you do finish that, go on to part C. Spoiler alert, part C is going to have some facts. Part B will not have facts. Okay, so what is the LCM between 2 and 7? 14. Okay, so in order to get opposites, we could multiply the first equation by 7. And if we do that, I'm going to write it right here. 7 times negative 4 is negative 28m. 7 times negative 2 is negative 14n. 14 times 7 is 98. How many of you did that same thing that I did? Multiplied by that. Okay, great. Okay, now you want these to cancel. So if this is 7, I want this to be a positive 14. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. I'm going to stack it up right underneath it. Okay, so 2 times negative 10 is negative 20m. 2 times 7 is 14n. And then 2 times negative 25 is negative 50. Okay, so the whole reason that we went through that is so what would happen? Yeah, when we add them together, the ends are going to cancel out. So I'm just going to add them straight down now. How are we doing with this part? Okay, so if I'm adding straight down, be careful of these negative guys. A negative and a negative is going to stay negative when you add them. 98 minus 50 is going to be 48. Divide each side by negative 48. And your m will be negative 1. Okay, will you just give me a thumbs up if you're able to get one of the variables? One of them? Okay. And then To find the second one, you're going to plug it back in. So I'll give you a minute to do that now if you haven't. And then go ahead and start C. Good. And for C, you should have two fractions. Leave them as fractions. Okay, and then again, you have the choice of which equation you want to plug it back into. So I just chose the top one. So this would be -4. Instead of m, I'm going to plug in -1, and then I'm going to solve this for m. So there are some negatives that we want to be mindful of. Okay, so a negative times a negative is a positive. Subtract 4 from both sides. Divide each side by -2. And then don't forget that your final answer is going to have that negative on there. So again, when you're writing your final answer, it's alphabetical order, so MN, so -1, -5. Okay, so use that to help you start part C if you haven't. And guess what? For part C, it really does not matter if you choose the A's or the B's to eliminate. They're the same amount of work. Spoiler alert, the denominator of your fraction is 19. You're doing good. Yay! Okay, so how many of you chose to eliminate the A's first? How many of you chose the B's? All right. Looks like more people chose the B's. Again, does not matter, okay? Does not matter which one you do. Okay, since most of you did the B's, I will follow suit. Okay, and then, so to eliminate the B's first, you'd multiply both by 2. So 4A plus 10B equals 6. And then I'd have to multiply the bottom by 5 on both sides. So then I'd have 15A minus 10B equals 5. Okay, again, the whole point of that is so that when you add, one of the variables cancels. And then when you divide, you can just leave it just like that. Okay, so 11 over 19. Okay, so that's your value for A, 11 over 19. Okay, so somebody in my last class asked, well, could I just eliminate the A's and then do the same process again with the B's? Yeah, you could do that. In fact, for this one, because the fraction's not very nice, is it? Some of you might like doing that better. I would like doing that better. But we are going to practice our fraction skills today. So I'm just going to plug this into the original. So 2 times 11 over 19 plus 5b equals 3. So when you're multiplying a whole number by the fraction, do you guys remember what part you multiply by? Yeah, good. So you have 22 over 19 plus 5b equals 3. And then from here you have an algebra equation, but when you subtract the 22 over 19 from both sides, I know sometimes we need a little reminder about that. So if I'm doing 3 minus 22 over 19, okay, what we want to do is get a common denominator. What's the common denominator? 19. So if I'm going to get a common denominator, I just make this. How do I find the top number? Just multiply by 3. What's 3 times 19? 57. So this is just 57 divided by 19. That's 3. Okay, so now I can do 57 minus 22. So 7 minus 2 is 5. 5 minus 2 is 3. I'm subtracting fractions. Oh no, now I have to divide. When you're dividing by a whole number with a fraction, that's the same thing as multiplying by what? Dividing by 5 is the same thing as multiplying by 1 over 5. So multiplying by 1 over 5. Okay, and yes, you can absolutely use your calculator to do that. But look, here's a little shortcut. See how you have 35 on top and 5 on the bottom? What's 35 divided by 5? 7. Okay, so 7 over 19. Yeah. You guys feel your brain stretching today, all those muscles? Don't worry, the ones that we're doing by hand today aren't going to be as complicated as that, but it's good to keep those muscles working, right? All right, so now we're going to go to our 2.8 packet. So we're going to use some of the skills that we did in our warm-up bell work today to help us write quadratic functions by hand. Okay, so with our day 2, right here, this is where we're going. Okay, so yesterday we learned how to do this on the graphing calculator. Today we're going to review how to do this by hand. And we're going to use the elimination method to help us write the equations. Okay, and if we're using elimination, we know that the coefficients for one variable have to be opposites. That's what we just talked about today, and that will be part of our process, that the coefficients for one variable must be opposites. Okay, we are still going to be using the standard equation for the quadratic function, where you have your f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, and then just remember that every coordinate point has the form of x and y. The reason why we want to remember that is that we can substitute these values into an equation. We can always substitute the x and y values into that equation if you have an input of x and an output of y. Okay, and in terms of y, another way that you can say y is your f of x. So we're going to see that in our chart, in our first example. Okay? Alright, so let's flip it to the next page. Okay, and yeah, so I've made you a handy dandy chart. We're gonna go through that chart together. That's just gonna help you compartmentalize each step. Okay, and the directions for example 2 are telling us that we have to write the quadratic function that fits the given points. So if we are writing the quadratic function, this is going to be our final answer. If it's saying you're writing a quadratic function, you are writing the f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so let's look at what they give us. They give us 3 points, 1, 0, 0, negative 3, and 2, 1. And then what I've done here is I've given you guys these steps so that you can follow along. The first thing we want to do is our goal is to write the system of equations using those given points. So if we're going to write the system using the points, we are going to substitute those into the equation. So each point is going to have its own row. So we have 1, 0, 0, negative 3, 2, 1. And then what we're going to do is we're going to plug x and y into this equation here. So plug x and y into our standard form of the equation. Really, in this case, your f of x is the same thing as what? Yeah, your f of x is y. Those are interchangeable. They are both the outputs. Okay, so every point is x, y. So all I'm going to do is just replace this. So instead of f of x equals, I'm going to plug in 0. So it's 0 equals a, and then I'm going to plug in 1 for x. So this is 1 squared plus b times 1 plus c. Okay, so you're substituting 0 for your y, and you're substituting 1 for x. Now we're going to simplify. Now we're going to take a little nap. Okay, so let's follow our order of operations. Remember, you have to do exponents before you multiply. So 1 squared is 1. 1 times a is a. 1 times b is b. And then plus c. So your simplified equation is just a plus b plus c equals 0. And we're going to do that with each one. So now here's my x and here's my y. Alright, so y goes in for f of x, so I have negative 3 equals, and you're plugging in 0 for x, so you have a 0 squared plus b times 0 plus c. Okay, so go ahead and simplify that, and then I also want you to try the last one, to plug those in and simplify, okay? Okay, and then Jack, what did you get for your simplified equation here?
Well, since it's multiplying by 0, for both a and b, they will both not be there, so this would be negative 3 plus c.
Yes, good. Okay, so because this is 0, yeah, 0 plus c, so that's just going to be c. So your simplified system is c equals negative 3. Excellent. Okay, and then for this one we have y equals, and then Danielle, can you read me what you're plugging in here? Oh yeah, sorry, Dan.
So I got 1 equals 4a.
So we tell me a times.
Oh, so
Yep.
2
Mhm.
the second
Yep.
plus b times 2 plus c.
then, yep, and then you already simplified it. You can tell me that too.
4A
Yeah?
plus 2B
Good.
plus 3.
Good. Okay, and I know that, especially as we keep doing this, you guys are going to be able to pick up on that really quick. So, like when you're doing this with your homework, if you want to write this step down right away, that's perfectly fine. Okay? I just want you to know where those are coming from. So, excellent.
Okay. I have a question.
Yeah.
So, if I were to like try and make the y value is 0, could I subtract negative, or could I just take -1 and then put it as negative c?
So we're going to do that next step together. So right now we have 3 equations. So it's a little different than what we were doing earlier. But you do have a value that we already know. So for step 2, we're going to be substituting that known value into the other 2 equations. This is going to create a new system. Okay, so we already know that your C value is -3. Okay, we already know that your C value is -3. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those 2 equations and we are going to plug them in and simplify. So if A plus B plus C equals 0, I can just substitute in -3. And then to make the system, I'm just going to add the 3 to both sides. So you'll have A plus B equals 3. And we're going to do the same thing with the other one. So our other equation was 4A plus 2B plus C equals 1. So we have 4A plus 2B minus 3 equals 1. And just like we did last time, we're going to add over 3. So we have 4A plus 2B equals 4. And now look what we got. It's a whole new world. A plus B equals 3, and 4A plus 2B equals 4. So with this system of equations, doesn't this look like what we did for our warm-up today? Yep, so now we're going to use that same process. Okay, and again, you can decide, do you want to eliminate the A's or do you want to eliminate the B's? And that's up to you. That's you. What do you think is going to be quicker? Do you guys have any that you noticed right away are going to be quicker? Let's stack them up. A plus B equals 3. 4A plus 2B. Nope, I guess they really are both going to be quick, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so if you want to get the opposites, right? This is 4A, I can make this negative 4A. Or this is 2B, I could make this negative 2B. Was there one you guys were already thinking of? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Alright, let's multiply both of them by -2. Well, not both of them, but the top. Okay, so if I multiply by -2, -2 times A is -2A. I usually do my double arrow. Minus 2B equals -6. Don't forget to multiply both sides by the -2 here. Usually that's like a small thing that some people miss. And then this one's going to stay the same because they're already opposites. That's why sometimes you multiply both and sometimes you don't. It just depends on, do you have the opposites. And then we're going to add straight down. So -2 plus 4 is 2A. 2A equals -2. Divide both sides by 2. Your A is -1. questions for me on that? All right. Can you guys find B? So we know A plus B equals 3. We're going to plug in -1. And then you just have an algebra equation. Add 1 to both sides. Okay, now once you've done this, what are the 3 variables that we have? A, B, C. Easy as 1, 2, 3. And now your final step is just writing out your function. Okay, so your final answer is f of x equals, and then what you're going to do is plug in the a, b, and c. So -1, we can just leave that as -x, so -x squared. It's a +4, so +4x, and then -3, and then that's your final solution. So you just created a quadratic equation from those 3 points. Okay, so I'm gonna have you guys do B, and then I'm gonna show you how I set that up, because with the table you don't have to make like all the lines and stuff. I just wanted you to have something where you could look back and see the directions. Okay, so with the first step, so the first thing that we're gonna do is I make my points, right, my x, y, so you can list them there. And then your second step is just going to be plugging into the equation of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And then you're going to write your final simplified equation. Okay, so I do want you to do this for this example. As you're doing this tonight, if you want to jump to the equation step, that is perfectly fine. Okay, but I want you to do that for all 3 points. So you have 0, -1, you have 3, -4, and you have 4, -9. Alright, let's check in and make sure we got the correct equations. So when you plug this in, and really, if you guys want, I know it's y equals, but if you guys want to put like the equals y at the end, I'm fine with that too. So this is 0, so you have the 0 squared plus b times 0 plus c. So on this side, you're going to be left with c. So it's c equals -1. That should be your first equation. How'd that one go? Okay. Okay, and then for the second one, you have -4, and then you have your 3, right? So it's a 3 squared plus b times 3 plus c. So when you're doing this, just be careful that you don't put like a squared by accident. So this is 9a plus 3b plus c equals -4. And then our last one here is -9 equals a 4 squared plus b times 4 plus c. So you have 16a plus 4b plus c equals -9. Okay, how did that first step go? Okay, that's your table. And then once you have that, now we're just replacing c into the equations. So this is 9a plus 3b, and then I'm just going to substitute right away. So -1 equals -4, and then all we're doing is adding that over. Okay, and then once we do that, we have a nice equation that we can use with a system. Okay, so you're plugging in C. Do you guys need another minute to do that for the second one? To plug in the C and simplify it?
Should I like simplify this?
You can.
No, it's easier.
If you've already processed that you can simplify it, then yeah, it would. You don't have to though. But good. Okay, and then for the next one, you had 16a plus 4b minus 1 equals negative 9. So again, you're adding over that 1, so you have 16a plus 4b equals negative 8. Okay, now at this step, some of you might recognize there's something special about these equations, and you actually could simplify them if you wanted, because what could you divide both sides of this equation by? 3. And you could divide both sides of this equation by 4, but you don't have to do that. So if that's not something that you recognize right away, you don't have to stress out about it. You can just go to the next step. You can stack these up, and then we can start to play the elimination game. Right? So then you just decide, do you want to eliminate the A's or the B's? What do you guys think? Yeah. Okay, so I have 3 and 4. So what's the LCM of 3 and 4? Yep. So how about we multiply the top by 4, and then we'd have to multiply the bottom by negative 3 so that they're opposite. So this would be 36a plus 12b equals negative 12. And that would give us negative 48a minus 12b equals positive 24. When we add them together, this will be negative 12a equals 12. So my a value would be negative 1. And then I can just substitute into one of these equations to find b. So 9 times negative 1 plus 3b equals negative 3. I already know that's going to be a negative 9, so I'm just going to put plus 9 on both sides. I have 3b equals 6, which means my b value is going to be 2. And then again, once you have your a, b, and c, you're ready for that final answer, which is f of x equals, your a value is negative 1, so this is negative x squared. Your b value is 2, so plus 2x. Your c value is negative 1. Okay, so there you go. Tomorrow we are going to do part C as our warm-up. And then your homework for tonight is only 4 problems. So you do have to do those by hand, okay? But it's only 4, okay? So if you want your points for that, you want to make sure you're ready for your test. That would be an excellent thing to do, okay?